Hello, and welcome to Talking Solutions. This is a 10th podcast from the Association for Solution-Focused Hypnotherapy. I'm Sally Hare.
And I'm Trevor Eddles, and we're both experienced solution-focused hypnotherapists. Today, we're really pleased to have Adam Eason with us. So welcome, Adam, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Lovely to have you. So Adam Eason has been a clinical hypnotherapist since first qualifying in 1997. He's lectured on Bournemouth University's MSc Hypnosis in Research, Medicine and Clinical Practice, and is founder and principal of the Anglo-European College of Therapeutic Hypnosis. He continues to conduct research into hypnosis and cognitive functioning at Bournemouth University's Psychology Department, and has written published peer-reviewed journal articles and books, including Hypnosis for Running and The Science of Self-Hypnosis, the Evidence-Based Way to Hypnotise Yourself. He runs the UK Hypnosis Convention and is co-founder and director of education for the UK Hypnotherapy Council, the UKHC.
Okay, among your specialities, you mentioned there's advanced mindset for endurance sports. That, along with your book on running, is what we'd like to focus on today. So hypnotherapy to improve sporting performance. In your opinion, what percentage of an athlete's performance is down to the training they've done, and what percentage is down to their mindset? And can you give us some examples to illustrate that?
One of the things that I found to be the most exciting applications of hypnosis, for example, with sporting, is its ability to influence and affect perception of effort. So even when the same amount of effort is being applied, hypnosis has an ability in order to be able to alter the individual's perception of that. It's something which a lot of elite athletes do automatically. More specifically, onto your question, you might think at first that I'm just sort of sidestepping it a little bit, but it is rare for any athlete to be able to absolutely outperform their training. Someone who has trained to run a sub 5-hour marathon typically doesn't go and run a sub 3-hour marathon at the event, or someone who's training to squat their own body weight in the gym really then squats double their body weight when they reach testing. However, I think most athletes will accept that they'll usually perform better than their training when they get to competition. Adrenaline and excitement, and also their training would have aimed for them to peak in their competition. The question is potentially, a slight false dichotomy, because when you're working with athletes, we're working with their mindset during and for their training as well, not just equipping them with the tools for a competitive event of some kind. So for example, applying an effective, motivating mindset so that they're treating training in a healthy and effective way, equipping people with mental imagery skills, cognitive strategies, a wide range of other approaches in order to help them train better and achieve more during their training. And the idea is then that has a direct knock-on effect in competition or a sporting event. So I think their mindset and the things that we work with can be classified as part of the training that they have done. All of that said, to try and no longer dodge your question, performance on the day is greatly affected by mindset. We all will have seen televised, big final points on the serve where people have malfunctioned, or the final hole on a golf course. Or when I was a boy, the latest I was ever allowed to stay up was back in 1985 in the World Snooker Final, the championship final, where the undefeatable, it seemed, reigning world champion was a man called Steve Davis. And it was this TV footage, it was watched by 19 million viewers past midnight, and it all came down to the final black in the final frame, and Dennis Taylor was playing against Steve Davis, and Steve Davis had this chance to pot the final ball in the final frame, and he missed it. It was bread and butter for him ordinarily. So the scenario, the pressure on players, on sports people, on athletes, directly impacts and affects. So I think, the mindset and the influence of the mindset will sometimes be determined upon the conditions which they're under. But I would absolutely say that performance on a competition and performance in the event itself that they've worked towards will be greatly influenced by mindset. An exact percentage I probably couldn't give you, but I think hopefully I'll be able to share a few ideas of some kind of tools and interventions and things that people use throughout this conversation that we have.
Mm. Yeah, please do. It's funny you mentioning that Steve Davis missing. I'd completely forgotten about that, but when I suddenly remembered it. It had been buried in my mind.
He put his hand on his forehead afterwards. I really liked him because he had red hair, and I realised that he wasn't very, massively charismatic, and used to have the fun poked out of it. But I was really rooting for him.
I think he was the underdog's underdog. So how important do you think it is for sports people to have really clear goals in order to succeed? I mean, how can you help them to keep those goals uppermost in their mind?
Well, I think it's vitally important. It's certainly at the crux of a lot of the things, a lot of the work that I do. I work with a lot of athletes, both sort of club level and novice level and elite level. The very first time that I ever ran London Marathon, for example, back in 2001, one of the things you find when you're running marathons is, people are very rarely interested in much else other than the time you're going to finish it in. Mm-hmm. When you get onto ultra marathons, people just are impressed that you finish. But with marathons, everyone wants to know, what time you're going to do, and there's potentially quite a lot of pressure. And I remember saying to someone, I'm not sure, I just want to get round. And he smirked and said, well, you're going to be hanging around with all the comedy runners in their costumes and so on. And this really worried me. I tended to be and still tends to be one of those people. I don't just do sports for fun. Mm-hmm. I need to know that I'm doing well, quite competitive, and crossing the line with a guy. Having my finishing photos with a guy dressed as a banana, for example, just wasn't the thing that was going to appeal to me. So, having a target, having a goal, that then mobilizes your training, having a desired outcome firmly lodged in your mind, helps you strategize in a number of ways, and across all sports, with the weightlifting and CrossFit type of events that I do today, absolutely, people need to be goal focused. Real elite athletes will have outcome goals, where they want to finish in the race, that they want to win, or they want to finish in front of someone else, or we want to win the league, or we want to get to the semi-finals at least. Some people will look at process goals, how they perform, and look at kind of technical aspects of their sport, for example. But the vast majority of us are going to be looking at performance goals, things that are set related to our own level of ability. Running our own personal best, or running a sub 3 hour marathon, or whatever it may be. The vast majority of athletes, do tend to use some form of goal setting as a way of enhancing their performance. Very few tend to be, effective and apply really evidence-based approaches to it. Of course, it focuses, it directs the individual, it makes training a lot easier. But a lot of people lack effective systems, or lack the time, or find it a bit stressful, or get tired, or whatever it may be. Having goals will direct attention, it will mobilize effort, it will enhance their persistence, and so on. Enable them to learn new strategies with their sport, technically. But ultimately, they're really important for all of those reasons, and the way to derive the best from it is for them to be specific. I don't want to teach people to suck eggs and start talking about the way to set smart goals. But some of those principles of being, you know, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound or trackable, for example, really do make a lot of sense. But that any goal ought to be challenging to a good level of difficulty, but ultimately attainable. You know, things that are too difficult can be, you know, if you've never run a marathon before, and perhaps, you know, you're starting out with it being an aid to reducing your weight, you know, it would probably be unrealistic to aim to go sub 2 hours, which no other human being has ever done. But funnily enough, this very week, the world record for marathon running was beaten, you know, 2 hours and 35 seconds, which is just crazy. You know, what an immense athlete. But, you know, but you know, getting them written down, remembering that, you know, Rocky Balboa always had a picture of his opponent on his mirror that he could grimace and wince at to remind him of his goals and his outcomes in all of the Rocky films. You know, but also then, you know, helping people with regards to their goals, you know, psychologically, with self-hypnosis, with hetero-hypnosis. You know, we embed, you know, memories of the future, which is, you know, ultimately just, you know, people stepping into future versions of themselves, achieving their goals and becoming familiar with their goals, becoming familiar with those outcomes and readying their mind for them. So yeah, you know, I think they're really important, and understanding that the science behind the goals effectively, really important as well, I think, to make them compelling, make people, you know, make them useful rather than a chain around their neck, you know.
Okay, no, that's brilliant. But moving on from that, then, what techniques do you give your clients to help them manage the stress of that big event that they're going to?
Well, I mean, teaching people to correct things, you know, to correctly appraise events, you know, and not catastrophizing, for example, you know, making sure that their beliefs, their cognitions about the demands of the event and so on are correct and healthy, and, you know, that they're not that they're not engaging in any sort of cognitive distortions or, you know, thinking errors, and that they're learning to be progressive with their internal dialogue. You know, preparations are really important, helping people get comfortable in their surroundings. You know, golfers always get to play a couple of rounds on a competition course before the tournament. You know, race drivers, you know, have a couple of days of prep before qualifying and so on. Even you know, Mo Farah ran half of London Marathon back in 2013 just to familiarize himself with proceedings and the atmosphere before he ran it the first time in full the following year. So sometimes, you know, knowledge of the environment and aiding or overcoming a little bit of uncertainty can help with over intensity, but also, you know, knowing what you can control. You know, I was probably in the best shape of my life ever in the 2007 London Marathon, and was aiming for a personal best. It was going to be the first time I'd ever gone sub 3 hours for a marathon. But it was just incredibly hot. It was the hottest one on record at the time. They ran out of water for the people in the second half of the race. You know, it was quite a traumatic event for some people, and ultimately you just can't control that. So getting stressed with regards to something along those lines, but in advance knowing, you know, we can control our own behavior, our own physical condition, our own motivation, but we can't control other people's behaviors or attitudes or thoughts, and we can't control the performance of others or the weather, you know, or the organization of the event. But I think, you know, importantly, and probably what's slightly more useful to people tuning in, you know, physical tools, you know, kind of somatic types of techniques in combination with things like self-hypnosis, you know, so the kind of techniques that a lot of my clients, my athlete and sports clients learn in the sessions with me, that they can then import into that real life environment. Sometimes we ask runners or lifters, you know, weightlifters, to imagine they have plugs in the soles of their feet, and they're able to imagine over intensity or over arousal, as it's often referred to in the literature, as a color or as a sense that floods out of their feet until they get to optimum levels, for example. And breathing associated with self-hypnosis techniques as means of calming down and helping with over intensity and things of that kind of ilk. With a lot of somatic techniques, they require a certain degree of self-awareness, using the insular region of the brain, for example, and having a good degree of self-awareness. So sometimes, connecting with one's own breathing, connecting with one's own heartbeat, to tune into where you're at and become aware, hands over a bit more control with our ability to be able to self-regulate, self-soothe, and so on.
That's really interesting because I'm sort of curious about those times. You see it on the TV, there's footballers, other sports where everything's going well, and then there's a referee's decision goes against them, or something happens, there's some distraction, and they lose that focus, and suddenly it's a Steve Davis moment again. Presumably you'd suggest using some of these techniques you're mentioning to kind of regain their concentration, regain control over that focus.
Yeah, well, I think prevention is the best place to start. So, as clinicians in the therapy environment, for example, relapse prevention is something that's really important to us. Someone's come to see us to stop smoking, for example, and then they find themselves in a place where they lose concentration for a moment, or forget where they are, or they've had a couple of drinks and someone offers them a cigarette, for example. Training them and building into our treatment plan relapse prevention is a good place to start. So having a certain degree of self-awareness and recognition skills in order that somebody can recognize what's happening to them when it happens. It's easier said than done, because hot emotions, ultimately, hot emotions, anger in particular, or stress of certain kinds, that they inhibit the upper regions of the brain. If your amygdala's firing and hippocampus is firing, for example, then the top regions of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we think all our logic, rational thoughts, and where we engage in self-control, gets closed down, and we have less access to that. So helping, so very often these are automated responses, and what we want to be able to do is train our sporting individuals to have enough self-awareness, enough self-recognition, and understand and have contingency plans for potential unexpected events. And very often, we'll kind of set those things in place with certain problem-solving therapy protocols in order that we've got contingency plans in place. But then, just as you said, things, to be able to self-regulate, things to be able to apply to ourselves in those times and get ourselves back on track. If you have been good goal, good and goal focused within your training program, the chances are that those goals and that degree of focus will be at the forefront of one's mind, and being able to remind ourselves of our motivations is a good place to start and bring ourselves back as far as distractions and as far as regaining our concentration is concerned. I also think self-hypnosis, for example, is very similar to what's often referred to in a lot of the literature as a flow state. So we teach, and a lot of sports people, love being in that flow state. They perform at their best when they are not thinking too critically. So sometimes getting knocked off of that and thinking too much can actually be problematic. So therefore, teaching the skills of being able to engage in self-hypnosis and regain that kind of position of flow within one's sport, within one's activity, is a really useful thing. They've got some very similar kind of phenomenological qualities as far as self-hypnosis and flow states are concerned. And a lot of sports naturally instigate that. Running for long periods of time, it can almost be a byproduct of flow state. The same with a lot of team sports, for example.
Okay, brilliant. The problem with sports is that it often hurts. So how do you help sports people deal with the pain?
Yeah, well, I mean, dependent upon whether we're working, within within the sport, within the sporting activity as it occurs, or if we're talking, post event. So with pain, I would be treating it pretty much the same as I would treat it with anyone else. Hypnosis has a great evidence base and a great capacity to help with pain relief. So post-event pain and pain that exists outside of the sport, I'd be working on clinically as I would usually with any patient citing pain-related issues. But working with athletes who require assistance with reducing pain, from my own personal experience, for example, I used to run ultra marathons, and when you've run 75 miles and that you still have another 25 miles to run, you've got to run another marathon, and usually across some hills. Your body is full of cortisol and fatigue and stress and blisters very often, and pain of all kinds, and you're hungry for the wrong stuff. There's a lot that you need to be able to do then. A real hero of mine, a lady who came and lectured at the UK Hypnosis Convention that I run last year. In the 1970s and 80s. She worked with Ernest Hilgard, a famed researcher. She's based at the University of Budapest today, but her name is Eva Banye. And she worked within the clinical environment and had her clients and patients and research participants be cycling stationary bicycles at the same time as engaging with hypnosis, and really created and pioneered active alert hypnosis protocols. And just showed that hypnosis is not dependent upon someone being relaxed with their eyes closed, for example. It did not require that. So we teach a lot of active alert hypnosis protocols in order that while people are engaging in their sport or their athletic endeavor, whatever it may be, they're able to work on the go. And that might be with a wide range of different sort of pain relieving types of processes. Typically, one of the things that I teach the people that I work with, for especially for endurance sports where pain is going to be there, and working with pain and working with our perception of pain and the perception of effort is always going to be there. Very often the people that do the best in endurance sports are the ones that can endure the discomfort the best. So I'm giving them a bunch of protocols. In particular, we start them with teaching things like a glove anesthesia protocol, where they can create numbness, but then turn that into colors and sensations, which gets magnified with self-hypnosis, that they can move to other parts of their body. With a lot of our runners, for example, we do self-hypnosis induced springy legs, or ask them to imagine their legs are moving automatically like a machine's, or that they adopt, or step into the shoes of someone who's running really lightly and bouncy inside of their mind. There's a wide range of different techniques that what we're seeking to do is shift them out of the discomfort that they're in and put them into a different frame without them dissociating. So a lot of sort of club level runners or club level athletes or novices use a lot of distraction when it comes to pain. They'll listen to music, they'll look at things that are going on around them, or they'll have random thoughts that they will lose themselves in, for example. Elite athletes and high quality athletes typically need to associate. They need to know how much it is safe for them to push themselves really hard. And so, we don't want them to engage in self-hypnosis protocols and active alert hypnosis protocols that are going to dissociate them and have them lose track of who and how they are.
Really helpful, yeah. In the films, we have that kind of hero's journey where our key protagonist kind of wins the day, despite all obstacles. But in real life, most of the runners in something like as big as the London Marathon, they don't win. They're just trying not to get photographed with the guy in the banana suit. So how do you help people, ordinary people, to coming back and keep training, to perform better next time.
But those guys, Sally, those guys are a different type of winner. So yeah, of course, only one guy can win, the marathon out of the 50,000 people that are there, and so on. So like I mentioned earlier, performance goals, and also, people having a sense of purpose, a purpose that is fueling them. So I find that a lot of the people that I work with are very interested in their own statistics and becoming a field in and of themselves, and experiment on and seeing what it is that they can do in terms of time and in terms of statistics and age ranking and things like that. But but also, a sort of byproduct really of good evidence-based approaches to hypnosis and hypnotherapy will tend to be, especially if you're promoting the teaching of self-hypnosis to patients, to clients, to athletes and sports people. A byproduct is very often, self-efficacy, but it's also a secondary goal, a secondary aim to boost self-efficacy. So what I mean by that is, within sports in particular, a man called Albert Bandura in the 70s, 80s, 90s really sort of drove this notion of, when you have confidence in your own ability, those abilities will naturally raise. When you have certain expectations of your own performance, you're likely to, you're much more likely to attain those positive expectations. So self-efficacy is whereby, the outcomes are driven greatly as a result of our belief in our ability to achieve those outcomes. So, fostering and seeking to make self-efficacy a sub goal, if you like, and have people driven and motivated to want to do better and want to increase their confidence in their own ability to do better, and make the competition themselves and what they are capable of doing, and frame things in that way, is something that can bring a lot of joy, a lot of drive, a lot of inspiration, and so on. Absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting. So what projects are you working on at the moment then? Have you got any exciting developments coming up?
Yeah, well, at Bournemouth University currently, we've been we spend a lot of time in the psychology labs there, and we're currently engaged in using self-hypnosis to inhibit the Stroop effect. It's a cognitive process whereby you are shown a word on a screen. And if it's a congruent word, i.e. if the word red comes up and it's in red ink, it's very easy for you to press the button of what color ink it is. So when you're tasked with pressing the button that is the color of the ink, and a range of words and neutral words come up, a lot of people find that when the word red comes up, it's difficult for them to put the reading of the word red to one side, because the word red is interfering with the fact that they're trying to work out the color of the ink, especially if the color of the ink is blue. If the color of the ink is blue or yellow, there's a delay, and that delay is called Stroop interference. And this is, a kind of gold standard cognitive process. And back in the late 1980s, early 90s, a man called Amir Raz showed that you could use hypnosis and give people suggestions that would inhibit this effect. It would almost remove it, this interference. So even if the word was red and the ink was blue, you'd just ignore the word red and you would just be able to hit the blue button. So what we've been using self-hypnosis to recreate the same effects. But what's been really interesting and important for us is that we've been looking at the amount of effort that people apply, and we do that with pupillometry. So we put them in what looks like a torture device where it locks their head still, and we measure the size of their pupils to see how much effort they are applying. because with a characteristic of hetero hypnosis is that when people respond to hypnotic suggestions, they do it automatically with very little volition. So there's very little effort, and typically, you know, their responses are involuntary. Whereas with self-hypnosis, you know, and you've got no one delivering the suggestions to you, it tends to be more effortful. So yeah, that's one of the projects that we're involved with at the moment, and that's of interest to at least 3 other humans on this planet. So you know, it's very popular, and we're applying our self-hypnosis protocol to strength training, and I have the UK Hypnosis Convention, which comes up in addition to all of the other things that I do.
When's that next schedule for?
It's in November each year. It's in this year's is November the 10th to the 12th. We have Darren Brown coming this year, which a lot of people are excited about. I'm going to be interviewing him on the subject of hypnosis. But even more important, you know, we bring a lot of really prolific and seminal authors and researchers from all over the world. We have a lady called Amanda Barnier coming from Australia, who's done, you know, a huge amount of research using hypnosis to try and understand the nature of delusion, a variety of different delusions. You know, it's very difficult to do research on people that have delusions, for example. You know, so one of the things that hypnosis can do is it can create the delusions within somebody in order for you to then you know, assess them and research them and so on. We have a guy called Stephen Lin, who's you know, a very prolific hypnosis researcher coming over from the US, and every year we do the same. You know, we bring a bunch of academics over, as well as, you know, having some people that are frontline hypnotherapists and psychologists and so on. And yeah, you know, it's something that I love it when it happens. It's just the organizing that is the pain.
You must be right in the throes of it now.
we really are, yes.
Well, it's, you know, thank you so much for sparing the time. You know, the convention does look amazing. I've had a look at, you know, the speakers that you've got coming up and all the things that you're doing. Can I just say, I have written down embedding memories of the future, because I think that's the most wonderful phrase. I should be using that all week.
Yeah, creating future memories, you know.
Yes, that's it. Great. Yeah,
passing a line at a marathon, and or just, you know, setting out to run a 9-minute mile on a training run or whatever it may be, you know. Yeah, creating future memories is a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And you can find information about our other podcasts on our website, afsfh.com, where you'll also find articles, information and resources. There's, of course, our solution-focused hypnotherapist directory, where you'll be able to look through the profiles of our fully qualified members and choose just the right therapist for you.
So that's about it for this podcast.
Next time, we'll be turning our attention to, I'm going to say it, Christmas, because it is coming. And we'll be out in December, and we'll be looking into common stresses around that festive season and offering some practical tips to help you cope and even maybe enjoy it.
Wow. Anyway, so it's goodbye from our guest, Adam Eason.
Goodbye. Thank you for having me.
And for me, Sally Hare.
And it's goodbye from me, Trevor Eddles. So,
Bye.
goodbye.